Hello, this is Katie Knott, presenting on my continuous quality improvement project titled Implementing Daily Bible Study to Increase Positivity and Decrease Stress. In this presentation, we're going to take a look at my components of the CQI plan, the PDSA cycles that I did, and then we'll talk about the summary of the results. So first, let's start with defining continuous quality improvement. So this is a process through which an organization makes a change through a workflow. The whole purpose is to create the best possible outcome by frequently evaluating processes and making changes as necessary. It's popular in a lot of different industries, and different examples of this are Six Sigma, Lean, and PDSA cycles. I used a PDSA cycle for this project, which we'll talk about here soon. Next, let's look at the components of my CQI plan. So before you can start, you have to determine what your problem is and then create your goal based on that. So for me, my problem was that I noticed I didn't have a consistent quiet time with God. So quiet time being daily Bible study, prayer, typically done independently or with one or two other people. And I had noticed in the past that when I did make that a consistent part of my routine, I was in a better mood, I had less stress, and so that was going to be the focus of my project. So typically a goal is meant to align with the organization's mission, and it should broadly establish what is to be accomplished by the project. So for me, my goal was to strengthen my faith, to increase positivity, and decrease stress. And then from the goal, you can begin to narrow it down to an aim. And so that's much more specific. So my aim for this project was going to be to spend 20 minutes daily in a quiet time with God. So now we'll look at the different members of my team. So typically in a CQI project, a team is made up of a multidisciplinary group of people where everyone has a role and responsibility in the project. So because this was supposed to be a change to my own spiritual health, I was the main team member. And then my husband played a role because he often participated in some of the Bible study and prayer activities. And then one of my coworkers and two ladies from my church community group helped me make different components of the plan, and they served as accountability partners by checking in with me weekly to see how it was going. There's a variety of methods and tools that are involved in the planning process of a CQI project. So two that I used were a process map and a fishbone diagram. A flowchart is another name for a process map, and it uses specific standardized symbols, as you can see in my process map off to the right. So for this project, I created a process map to help me determine when the best time to do my quiet time was going to be. My main problem with not having consistency in doing a quiet time was that I had a fluctuating schedule because I work as a nurse 3 nights a week and I'm off 4 days a week. So this was going to be crucial in helping me determine when I should do my quiet time every day. And then we had the fishbone diagram. This is also known as a cause and effects diagram. And gets its name because it kind of resembles the bones of a fish. So off to the right there's the main problem. And for me, that was going to be the inconsistent Bible study or quiet time with God. So that's the head of the fish. And then all the different ribs of the fish that branch out from that main issue are the different factors that contribute to the problem. So for me, that was things like a fluctuating routine, difficulties with concentration, having too many time commitments, all of those contributing to my main issue. And then once we have all those determined, we can look at how we're actually going to collect this data and how we'll know that it's successful. So first, the outcome measures are what are the desired results. So for me, that was going to be consistent quiet time for at least 20 minutes that resulted in increased positivity and decreased stress. And then how was I going to collect that data? So every day, my plan was to collect the number of minutes spent on a quiet time and to collect my Mood Panda score. So Mood Panda is an app that you can have on your phone. It allows the user to rate their happiness scale on a scale of 0 to 10, with 10 being the highest. And I tied that to wanting to have the goal of increased positivity. So I kind of tied those together. And then at the end of every week, my goal was to take the perceived stress scale, which is listed off to the right. That asks the user to identify using a Likert scale, so using 0 to 4, and to rate different questions with that scale. So it talks about coping ability and feelings of stress and anxiety, and so that was something I was going to collect every week. The process measures are the evidence of success or failure of the project. So success would be a 20-minute average quiet time, high Mood Panda scores, and low PSS scores, and then the failure would be not achieving those objectives. And then because I hypothesized that making this a habit would improve my mood and decrease my stress, as evidenced by those scores, this was going to be my change idea. So now let's take a look at the PDSA cycles that I did. So a Plan, Do, Study, Act cycle is a CQI tool that encourages participants to move through 4 phases, each of which are influenced by the previous phase and also impacts the next phase. So it's an ongoing process and is typically repeated. So first you start with the plan phase. That's exactly what it sounds like. So I identified the problem by determining I had no consistent quiet time, multiple time commitments, and a fluctuating routine. And my plan was to use my process map to determine when to do my quiet time every day, and then to record the data that I mentioned before, daily and weekly. And again, there's my process map. I started my project on Sunday, March 17th. I recorded daily that data I just talked about, and then weekly. And then I finished my first PDSA cycle at the end of that week. So here are the results for my first PDSA cycle. You'll notice a couple different things from that table off to the left. First, my average minutes spent on a daily quiet time, as evidenced by the mean at the bottom of the chart, was 15. So that was lower than my goal my aim to achieve at least 20 minutes every day. And then my mood panda score, the average for that was 7.1. One thing you'll notice from this chart is that the number of minutes spent on a daily quiet time didn't exactly correlate to my mood panda scores. So some days where I spent more minutes on a quiet time, I didn't necessarily have a higher score, and vice versa. And over here is a figure that further illustrates that data. The ACT phase is an important part of the PDSA cycle because it allows the participants to look at the results from the first cycle, make changes where necessary, and then repeat the cycle again. So it was clear from my first cycle that some changes needed to be made before starting the next one. So before starting my second PDSA cycle, I decided to begin a new Bible study plan that included videos and a workbook, which broke down the study into individual days. And I hoped this would help me to consistently meet my 20-minute goal. I also decided to stop using the Mood Panda app somewhere in week 2. I noticed that I just wasn't consistent with it. And it seemed that my mood could be different depending on what I was doing when I submitted it. So for my second PDSA cycle, you'll see that I only recorded the number of minutes spent on a daily quiet time and my perceived stress scale at the end of the week. So now we have to determine, did this actually work? So my original plan was to increase positivity and decrease stress by adding a daily quiet time of at least 20 minutes into my routine. So if you look back at the chart, I did not achieve a quiet time average of 20 minutes. And my PSS did not consistently decrease with each week. Actually, week 2 was my highest score with the PSS, with the score of 23. And that was the week that I actually had the highest average for my quiet time minutes, which was 16. Now, there could have been some other factors contributing to this. During week 2, my husband was interviewing for a job across the country, so that would have required us to move in a couple weeks. And so I could have had just a higher level of stress that week than I normally would. Because by week 3, you'll notice that the PSS score was actually a 12, so much lower. And I had a consistent time of about 15 minutes of quiet time. And then, as I mentioned, the Mood Panda app also just wasn't effective. So based on the results that I just talked about, it seems that this really wasn't much of a success because I didn't achieve the aim that I set out to do. If I could do this again, I would have studied the effect of this change over a longer period of time, maybe over the course of 4 weeks or a couple months, and just evaluated the effect of doing a quiet time would have on my stress score. So even though the results don't appear to indicate a successful change, this process did provide me with a simple and effective plan to begin making prayer and Bible study a daily habit. And so for me personally, that was a success. And then finally, here are the references that I used for this presentation. Thank you so much for listening.